Okay, we are starting with the face of the head and neck topic. So you can see a monkey's face here. Okay, so the monkey, what is the action it is doing? Anybody will you answer for this? So the face shows what sign? Kogilavani, will you answer what sign it shows? So will you not answer? Okay. Brislin, will you answer for this? Yeah. It is laughing. It is not even smiling. It is laughing. Okay. So you know the face is the mirror image of your expressions. So with the help of expressions of different persons we can learn so many things. So you know the extension of the face. So face extends from the hairline superiorly to inferior, it extends to the chin and the base of the mandible. On each side it extends to the auricle. So you know the face has a skin fascia. So the skin is very vascular, that's why you can see the color difference between the individual. Because of rich vascularity, it appears bluish and blanched. And it is also rich in sebaceous and sweat glands. That's why, since it is rich in sebaceous gland, most of the people are getting acne. And it is very lax also, rich in elastic tissue. And you can also, because of the laxity, any infection, the first thing your facial appearance will change. That is, edema is the first sign of any infection, I think. Then other than this, it is also very elastic also. So underlying the skin you have the superficial fascia, which consists the superficial muscles, nerves and vessels. So the deep fascia is absent in the face. So today, actually yesterday I have learned the embryology of the face. Actually the face muscles, everything develops from the second branchial arch. And actually they are subcutaneous muscle. So actually if you see morphologically they are remnant of Paniclosus carnosus. So you can see in animals there will be a continuous sheet will be hanging from the lower part of the face. For example in cow. So actually so in lower animals that part is called Paniclosus carnosus. So actually morphologically it represents the Paniclosus carnosus. Okay. So functionally if you see the face is oriented into three openings. Okay, one is around the orbit, the facial muscles are oriented into the orbit, then around the nasal aperture, around the oral fissure, because all the movements are done by these muscles. Okay, so we'll straight away now go on to the muscles of the facial expression. So the muscles of facial expressions are grouped according to the openings present in the norma frontalis of the skull. So the first group is the one which is present in the scalp. This muscle is the frontalis muscle, that is occipitofrontalis muscle, and other will be the one which grouped into the root of the auricle. So you have temporoparietalis and auricular, the anterior, superior and posterior muscle. The other group is one around the eyeball. So you have orbicularis oculi, procerus, corrugator supercilii, and you have the extension of the frontalis also. So other group of muscle around the nose. So you have nasalis muscle, then procerus muscle, and you have the levator labii superior nasi, and you have the depressor septae muscle also. The other group of muscle will be oriented around the oral fissure. So there are totally 10 muscles around this. I will later explain what are the muscles. So first we'll see the muscles of the scalp. Already I have read in the scalp, it's revision only. So the muscles of scalp, here is the occipitofrontalis muscle. It has two bellies, occipital belly, other one will be the frontal belly. So occipital belly, there are two occipital bellies on either side. So it arises from the lateral part of the highest nuchal line and it is inserted into the epicranial aponeurosis. This is supplied by the posterior auricular branch of fascia nerve. So the main action of this muscle is it moves the scalp backward. You can try this movement now and you can feel the movement of the muscle. Okay. So you know the norma occipitalis has a protuberance here, external occipital protuberance. The line extending from here is the superior nuchal line. Above that sometimes inconstant line will be there, that is the highest nuchal line. So this occipital belly arises from the lateral part of highest nuchal line. Okay. Now if you see the frontal belly of the occipitofrontalis, this is the frontal belly, there are two frontal bellies. So it arises from the skin of the forehead, doesn't have any bony attachment. So it blends with the procerus muscle and even with the orbicularis arculae and corrugator supercilia also. And this muscle is inserted again into the epicranial aponeurosis. So both the bellies, occipital and frontal bellies, both are inserted into epicranial aponeurosis. But if you see the nerve supply, both the bellies are supplied by fascia nerve, but the branch is different. So here it is supplied by the temporal branch of the fascia. If you see the action of the frontal belly, it moves the scalp forward and it even raises the eyebrows in surprise and casts horizontal wrinkles in the skin of the forehead. You can see. So this action is mainly during horror and fright. Okay, you can see the horizontal wrinkles in the forehead is done by the frontal bellies. Okay. So you can see the occipitofrontalis, that is frontal part is mingling with the procerus and orbicularis arculae and with the corrugator supercilius. You can see the procerus muscle. So procerus is a continuation of the frontalis part of occipitofrontalis. Okay. See the action of the frontalis, surprise and frightening causes transverse wrinkles of the forehead. Okay. And you know the nerve supply. Actually this picture shows the lateral view of the face with the parotid gland close to the external acoustic meatus here, and you can see the branches of the facial nerve that I will explain you later. You can see the temporal branch supplying frontal belly and the posterior auricular branch supplying the occipital belly here. Okay, and next group of muscle is the muscles of the auricle. So in that we are going to study only the origin of the temporoparietalis. So other muscles doesn't have much importance. Okay. So if you see the temporoparietalis muscle, it arises from epicranial aponeurosis here and gets inserted into the root of the auricle. So the nerve supply, obviously this region is the temporal region, so it is supplied by the temporal branch of fascia nerve. So the action is, it mainly rises the auricle. Actually this muscle, the muscles which is grouped around the auricle, this auricle is anterior, posterior and superior. So all are well developed in lower animals, particularly dogs. You can see, have you all seen the dogs moving the pinna? So that is mainly well developed in the dogs. Okay. So next we will go on to the muscles around the orifice of the ear, eye. Okay. So this includes four muscles: orbicularis arculae, corrugator superciliae, and frontal belly of the occipitofrontalis, and levator palpebrae superioris. This muscle you will read detailedly in orbit. Okay. So in the face only you have to know the names. So out of this, the very important one is the orbicularis arculae. Okay. So orbicularis arculae is very important around the orifice of eye, and in the muscle of scalp, occipitofrontalis is important. Other muscles are least important only. So they will not ask in exam, but you have to know, because you have MCQs, anything can be asked in MCQ. Okay. So now we will see about the orbicularis arculae. So this orbicularis arculae surrounds the orbit. Mainly it surrounds the palpebral fissure. So what is palpebral fissure? So the palpebrae means eyelid. So you have superior upper eyelid, lower eyelid. In between is you have a fissure. So now this muscle is surrounding the palpebral fissure and even the orbital margin also. So it has three parts. One part is the orbital part which surrounds the orbital margin. Other part is the palpebral part which surrounds the eyelid. And other one is the lacrimal part. There are three parts of orbicularis oculi. One is orbital, palpebral, and third one is the lacrimal part. Okay. Now we will see immediately about the origins of the orbital part. So before going into that, just understand this image. If you understand only, you will know, you will remember the origin of the orbital part. Okay, this is just a picture of the orbit. Actually, the orbit, if you see after the bone, you have the orbital periosteum. So next to that, you have the skin superficial fascia. Next to that will be the orbital fascia. That orbital fascia is nothing but the periosteum of the orbit, so which thickens to form the tarsal plates. Okay, you can see the pink color one here is the tarsal plate which is present above the upper eyelid and below the lower eyelid. So this is called superior tarsal plate and inferior tarsal plate. Okay, so now this is nothing but the fascia, this palpebral fascia, orbital condensation of orbital fascia. Okay, actually the structures piercing the superior tarsal plate will be the levator palpebrae superioris muscle. So the medial end of the tarsal plate, both the sides they thicken and join to form the medial palpebral ligament. On the lateral side it is thickened to form the lateral palpebral ligament. So the medial end will be attached to the lacrimal crest of maxilla. This is the lacrimal crest here, so which is attached here. Okay, so the lateral end, that is this lateral palpebral ligament is attached to Whitnell's tubercle. It is nothing but a tubercle on the inner surface of the zygomatic bone on the lateral wall of orbit. Okay, I think now you are clear what is medial palpebral ligament, what is lateral palpebral ligament. Okay, now the orbital part of orbicularis oculi arises from medial palpebral ligament, this one, and also from the frontal process of maxilla and adjoining part of the frontal bone. So it forms a complete elliptical loops. You can see it forms a complete elliptical loops around the orbital margin and it connects with the other. So it doesn't have a specific insertion. Okay. So and next part will be the palpebral part. Okay. So the palpebral part you can see here. So this is the palpebral part which arises again from medial palpebral ligament and it sweeps laterally over the upper and lower eyelid and gets inserted into the lateral palpebral ligament. You can see in this picture. So it starts from medial palpebral ligament and gets inserted into the lateral palpebral ligament. So if you see the action of the palpebral part, it closes the eyelids gently as in sleep or blinking. But if you see the action of orbital part, it actually closes the lid tightly as in as you met with bright image, okay, or any object. Okay. Now you can see the gentle closure of the eyelid here. This is mainly done by the palpebral part of the orbicularis oculi. Okay. So next we will see about the lacrimal part. So the lacrimal part, this is the lacrimal part which lies behind the lacrimal sac here. So actually it arises from posterior lacrimal crest of the lacrimal bone here and inserted into the anterior lacrimal crest. Okay, and also into the lateral palpebral raphe. You can see the part of lacrimal part. So main action of this lacrimal part is it dilates the sac. Okay, so that helps in the drainage of the lacrimal fluid. Okay, this is the main function of the lacrimal part. Okay, so now I think you are clear about the origin, insertion and action of the muscles. So the nerve supply will be as usual, you have the facial nerve. Okay, so the actions I already said, this is the part which closes the lid tightly is the orbital part, gently is the palpebral part, and draining, which helps in the drainage of lacrimal fluid, is the lacrimal part. So if all the parts contracts together, the entire orbicularis oculi contracts together, it draws the skin of the forehead temple and the cheek towards the lateral angle of the eye. So this creates an appearance that is called as crow's feet, that is more prominent in the old age people. Okay, so this is mainly done by the contraction of the entire orbicularis oculi muscle. Okay. Now see this picture. So what is the name of this action? One of you, will you answer for this? What is the name of this action? Okay. Will you answer for this? Very good. Winking. So winking, have you tried winking? So usually boys will wink, girls, okay, sometimes are for cheating or something, they will use this. So that is mainly done by the orbicularis oculi muscle. Okay. So then if you see, if there is a, because of the nerve injury, if the muscle is paralyzed, it results in the drooping of the eyelid, lower eyelid, that is called ectropion, and it causes spilling of the tear on the cheek. This is called epiphora. So these are the one of the main symptoms and signs of Bell's palsy. Okay, I think now you are clear about the orbicularis oculi. Next we will go on to the corrugator superciliary. This is less important, no need to muck up the origin and insertion, just you have to know. Okay, so the origin of this muscle, corrugator superciliary, so origin from superciliary arch. So insertion into the skin of the eyebrow. So the action, if you see, it produces vertical wrinkles of the forehead as in frowning. Okay, so this is the action, and nerve supply is as usual the facial nerve. Okay, and if you see the levator palpebrae superioris, the name itself you can identify where it is located. So palpebrae is located in the eyelid superior, that is in the upper eyelid. What is the action? Levator, elevation. Okay, so you cannot see the muscle in this muscle in the face. Only if you dissect the orbit you can see. So it is a triangular sheet of muscle between the roof of orbit and superior rectus muscle here. Okay, it arises from sphenoid bone and inserted into the skin of the upper eyelid here. So here the nerve supply differs. It is supplied by oculomotor nerve, third cranial nerve, not the facial nerve. So this point you have to make a note. And action, what I said is, it raises or elevates the upper eyelid. Okay. So I think that's all about the muscles surrounding the orbit. So next we will go on to the muscles around the nasal cavity. So at this point, you have any doubt? Anybody wants to clear your doubts? Shall I proceed? Okay. So I'll proceed with this. Okay, now come to the muscles around the nasal cavity. So this and all just you have to know. Okay, so what are the muscles? One is the procerus. Now you can see the procerus muscle, which is the continuation of frontalis. The next largest muscle here is the nasalis muscle. So which consists of two parts. Compressor part, because it surrounds the bridge, and the other one is the dilator part. So it is called compressor nares, dilator nares. So the compressor part is otherwise called transverse part, dilator nares is otherwise called alar part, because it is situated on the side of the nose, that is the ala of the nose. And the next one is the depressor septum. So if you see, the most of the muscles of the face are either they are sphincters or dilators. So sphincters means they will close the apertures, and dilators means they will dilate the apertures. Okay. So now we will see the procerus muscle. So it arises from nasal bone, passes upwards, and in skin inserted into the skin of the lower part of forehead. So the action here is it produces transverse wrinkles. Okay, transverse wrinkles, and even it pulls down the medial end of the eyebrow. Okay, as in frowning. Okay. So next muscle is the compressor nares of the nasalis muscle. So it arises from maxilla close to nasal notch, insertion. So it forms an aponeurosis, crosses the bridge of the nose and mingles with the neck opposite side, and mainly it compresses the mobile nasal cartilages. Okay. And if you see the dilator nares, this muscle, see this is compressor nares. So this one is the dilator nares muscle. Okay. so which arises from maxilla close to the margin of the nasal notch, and it is inserted into the ala of the nose. It is inserted here itself. So the main function here is it widens the nasal aperture, okay, as in deep inspiration. So it is a sign of anger. So this anger sign is mainly done by both dilator naris and levator labii superioris along nasal muscle. Okay, I think you are clear about nasalis muscle. Next one will be the depressor septae muscle. Here you can see the depressor septae and depressor nasae. So it arises from the incisive fossa of the maxilla. You know, this fossa is situated above the incisor teeth, and it is inserted into the lower mobile part of nasal septum. The main function of the depressor septae is it brings the nasal septum downwards, or it fixes the nasal septum, and it also active in anger. Okay, so clear. I think muscles around the nose I have finished. I think you people are clear. Then I will continue around the muscles around the mouth. So here the muscles are grouped into two parts. There are sphincters and dilators. So the sphincters mainly here is the orbicularis oris. So other muscles, they act as dilators only. Okay. So actually this dilators, they are 9 muscles. So mainly they are oriented to the upper, lower lip and to the angle of the mouth. Okay. So the names of the muscle are levator labii superioris alak nasae, labii superioris, anguli oris, zygomaticus minor, major, depressor labii inferioris, depressor anguli oris, risorius and buccinator. Okay, so we'll see one by one muscle. The slides are not arranged as I grouped here. Okay, first we'll see about the orbicularis oris. So it surrounds the oral fissure. Okay, so it consists of mainly two parts: extrinsic part or superficial part, intrinsic part or deep part. Usually this extrinsic part will be thick and it has two stratum. Okay, one is the superficial and the middle stratum. So this actually muscle is formed by the interlacing fibers of the muscles which converge around the mouth, mainly from the angle and to the lips. Okay, so they are mainly derived from the buccinator and other lip muscles. Okay, so I will while telling buccinator, I will explain how it gets inserted. Now next, if you see the intrinsic portion, that is the deep portion, it is a thin stratum of the orbicularis oris. So it consists of two parts: superior incisivus and inferior incisivus. So superior incisivus arise from maxilla, inferior incisivus arise from mandible. They are mainly inserted into the lips and angle of the mouth. Okay, actually this orbicularis oris muscle, if you see, okay, so they are mainly they cross near the angle of the mouth because they are contributed by other muscle fibers here. So some of the fibers will cross and will go to the upper lip, other will go to the lower lip. Some they will cross, the upper part will go to lower lip, the lower part will go to the upper lip. So like this the insertion will differ. Okay, so you can see here. So this is the muscle fibers of the buccinator. See, the uppermost fibers will go to the upper lip and the lowermost fibers will go to the lower lip. And the middle fibers, they will cross and the lower part will go to upper lip and the upper part will go to the lower lip. And usually the other muscles, the levator anguli oris, zygomaticus major, buccinator, risorius, depressor anguli oris, they meet at the angle of the mouth and they form a inconstant node-like structure that is called modiolus. Okay, so now this orbicularis oris extrinsic part also derived from all these muscles. They start at the modiolus here. Okay, so modiolus is nothing but a dense, compact, mobile fibromuscular mass situated 1.25 cm lateral to the angle of the mouth. This is the angle. Okay, so it is formed mainly due to interlacing fibers of 5 muscles. So what are the 5 muscles? These are the levator anguli oris, zygomaticus major, buccinator, depressor anguli oris and risorius. So this can be palpated by using your opposed thumb and index finger, and you compress the skin and mucosa, you can feel it. Okay. So if you, there is any damage to the modiolus, then there will be a facial asymmetry. Okay. So modiolus is an important MCQ part, because since you don't have 2 mark question, so this will be asked in MCQ. Okay. So next we will see about the levator labial superioris alagnaceae. So this muscle arises from the frontal process of maxilla here and inserted into the ala of the nose by one slip, and other slip will go to the upper lip. So as the name says, it elevates the upper lip, and it also helps in dilatation of the nostril. That is, I already said, it helps in the action of anger. Okay. So you can easily remember with the help of the name of the muscle, no need to mug up. Okay. So levator labial superioris alagnaceae. So it elevates the upper lip and also elevate the lateral part of the nose, that is, it dilates the nostril. Okay. So next we will see about the levator labial superioris. This is a little bit deep muscle, later to levator labial superioris alagnaceae. Okay. So here muscle is shown after the removal of the zygomaticus muscle and levator labial superioris. So this is levator labial superioris, here you can see. So it arises from maxilla just above the infraorbital foramen. Okay. So you have infraorbital foramen here. Okay. So above the infraorbital foramen, from the infraorbital margin, this muscle arises, and it is obviously inserted into the upper lip, and action will be same, elevates the upper lip. And levator anguli oris, as the name says, it elevates the angle of the mouth and it is inserted into the angle of the mouth. It lies deep to levator labial. This is the levator labial superioris. So deeper to that, you can see the levator anguli oris here. Okay. So it arises from maxilla below the foramen, not above the foramen is levator labial superioris. Below the foramen here is the levator anguli oris. So it rises the angle of the mouth. You can see the insert picture here. Okay. So the next muscle we are going to see is the zygomaticus minor and major. So from the name itself, it has, both the muscle has origin from zygomatic bone, and the insertion is different. The minor inserted into upper lip, and the major gets inserted into the angle of the mouth. Okay. So if you see the action of the minor, since it is attached to the upper lip, it elevates the upper lip. Okay. If you see the major, okay. So this is the minor and this is the major. So major, it draws the angle of the mouth upward and laterally. So you know it is actually the fibers here interlace and it forms the modiolus here, and it even contributes to the eccentric part of the orbicularis oris. Okay. So next we will see about the depressor labii inferioris. So this is the depressor labii inferioris. So from the name itself, so labii inferioris, that is, it is related to lower lip, and the action here is depression of the lower lip. So it arises, as I said in the previous class, it arises from the anterior oblique line of the mandible and is inserted into the lower lip. The action here is depresses the lip. Okay. And if you see the next muscle, depressor anguli oris, okay. So it arises from the posterior part of oblique line of the mandible, and it is mainly inserted into the angle of the mouth here. Okay, contributes to modiolus. So it draws the angle of the mouth downward and laterally. Okay, so levator anguli oris, it draws the angle of the mouth upward and laterally, but here depressor downward and laterally. Okay. So next muscle is the risorius. Okay, so risorius actually it arises from parotid fascia, and it is a continuation of the platysma muscle. Okay, and this muscle here, it is inserted into the angle of the mouth. Okay, the action here is it retracts the angle of the mouth gently. Okay, so other than this, if you see the action of the risorius muscle, it also helps in the action of grinning. Okay. And the next small muscle which is present in the chin is the mentalis. It is a small conical muscle. So arises from the incisive fossa of the mandible and inserted into the skin of the lower lip here. Okay, so the action here is it puckers the skin, chin and protrudes the lower lip. Okay, so that's all about the risorius and mentalis muscle. Okay, I think you are now clear about all the muscles and its action. So the one more important muscle is coming around the oral fissure. That muscle is the buccinator muscle, which is very important. It is a 5-mark question. So the 5-mark questions in the muscles are orbicularis oculi, occipitofrontalis, orbicularis oris and buccinator. Okay, so the buccinator muscle is also otherwise called trumpeter's muscle or bugler's muscle. Okay, so I think you know this parts of the maxilla. This is the alveolar process of maxilla. This is the alveolar process of the mandible. Okay, now see the origin. Okay, so it arises from the outer surface of alveolar process of maxilla opposite 3 molar tooth, and the lower fibers also arise from the outer surface of alveolar process of mandible opposite 3 molar tooth. So other than this, it also arises from pterygoid hamulus. There will be a fibrous band extending from pterygoid hamulus to the maxilla. This is called pterygomandibular raphe. Okay, so this fibers also the fibers of buccinator also arises from pterygomandibular raphe. And one more thing, pterygomaxillary raphe. This also gives origin to the buccinator muscle. Okay, so now the origin is clear. It arises from maxilla, alveolar process of maxilla and mandible opposite 3 molar teeth, and from pterygomandibular raphe and pterygomaxillar raphe. Okay, now if you see the insertion, it inserts in a complicated manner in the upper lip and the lower lip. Okay, so this muscle, see, this is the buccinator muscle. It is little bit deeper. We cannot see superficially in this section. After removing the muscle of risorius only you can see. Actually, on reaching the angle of the mouth, this buccinator muscle, it divides into upper fibers and lower fibers. In this you can see it divides into upper and lower fibers. The upper fibers goes to upper lip straightly, lower fibers goes to lower lip straightly. But the intermediate fibers, they decussate here. Okay, so in that the upper fibers will go to the lower lip and the lower fibers will go to the upper lip. Okay, so I think you are clear about the insertion of the buccinator muscle. Okay, I will continue with the nerve supply. So this is also supplied by the fascial nerve. So buccinator, so buccal branch of fascial nerve. Okay, so action, if you see, the main action of the muscle here is it flattens the cheek against the gum and teeth. Okay, and mainly it prevents the accumulation of food in the vestibule of mouth during mastication. Okay, so it also helps in responsible for blowing of the cheek and expelling the air. Okay, as the trumpeters they will do. Okay, and one important feature of the buccinator here, this muscle is pierced by parotid duct. Okay, so I think you are clear about the buccinator muscle. So all the muscles around the mouth are over. Okay, only one muscle is left. So that muscle is actually a superficial subcutaneous muscle of the neck, but it has its insertion into the face. So this is that muscle. What is the name of this muscle? Anyone will you answer here? Okay.
Platysma.
Very good. Platysma. Good. Okay. Platysma muscle. Actually, it arises from the deltoid fascia. Okay. And it actually sweeps forward and medially, and part of the fibers will be gets inserted into the lower part of the base of the mandible. So other fibers they continues as risorius and gets attached into the angle of the mouth. So this is also supplied by the cervical branch of the fascia nerve. So the main action of the muscle here is it mainly releases the pressure of skin on the subcutaneous veins. Okay, and it also helps in the depression of the mandible, and it pulls the angle of the mouth in horror and fright. Okay, now the muscles of the facial expressions are over. So at this point, do you have any doubt to clarify? or shall I continue? Okay. Okay, I am going to continue with this. So, will you answer for this? So, what is the name of this action? So, what is the name of this muscle producing this action? Kirtana, roll number 66. Will you answer for this? You can unmute your mic and you can answer. What is the name of this action? And what is the name of the muscle which produces this? So Bharani, one of you has answered it as procerus. Actually, other than procerus, the main muscle which produces this action is
Compressorinus.
pardon?
Compressorinus.
No, actually this is dilator nares. So this is a sign of anger. So that is done by the dilator nares and levator labial superioris and the nasal. Okay? And even the depressor subtae somewhat help in this action. Okay. So now I will continue. We will go on to the motor innervation of the face. Actually, you know the facial nerve is the seventh cranial nerve. It arises from pons. Okay. So after emerging from the stylomastoid foramen, okay. So it divides into two trunks. You can see it divides into two trunks here: temporofacial and cervicofacial trunk. The temporofacial trunk again divides into temporal branch and zygomatic branch. The cervicofacial trunk, it gives three branches: buccal branch and the mandibular branch and cervical branch. So you can keep your hand on the side of the face and you can easily remember the branches of the facial nerve. So you can see in the previous picture. Okay, so these are the 5 branches in the face. This is the temporal branch, and here is the zygomatic branch, and upper buccal, lower buccal, that is buccal branch. This is the parotid duct, and this is the mandibular branch, and this is the cervical branch. And one more branch it gives on the posterior side, that is the posterior auricular branch, okay, which supplies the muscles around the auricle and the occipital belly of the occipitofrontalis. Okay, so now actually no need to remember what are the branches supplying specifically which muscle. Okay, so generally if you write facial nerve, that is enough. Okay. Okay, then we'll go to the cadaveric images of face. Just see, this is the cadaveric image you can see. So you can see the parotid gland here. This is the auricula pinna. Okay, you can see the branches of facial nerve here. You can see here, and you can see the orbicularis arcli muscle here. Okay, so this is the zygomaticus minor here. Sorry, this is major, this is minor. And even here you can see the nasalis muscle, levator labii superioris, alacne nasi, levator labii superioris here. And this is anguli oris, orbicularis oris here. Okay, and this muscle is a masseter muscle, that is a muscle of mastication that will not be grouped in the muscles of face. Okay, you can see the parotid gland. Okay, and even you can see the facial artery, tortuous facial artery in the face here. Okay, and other than this, even you can see the superficial temporal artery here. Okay, so these are the thing you are seeing in these pictures. Okay, so next we'll go to the sensory innervation of the face. So this is an important 5-mark question, sensory innervation. Actually, the face sensation is mainly supplied by the 5th cranial nerve, trigeminal nerve. Okay, so the trigeminal, tri means 3, it has 3 divisions. So what are the 3 divisions? So ophthalmic division, which is confined to the ophthalmic, that is around the orbit, and the next division is the maxillary division, which supplies the maxillary area and even the upper lip and the lateral part of the nose. Okay, and medial part of the cheek. Mandibular division supplies the lateral part of the cheek and even the temple region and some part of the auricle and the chin, okay, and the lower lip. Okay, so the V1 here, this is not V, that is Roman number letter 5. So that is fifth cranial now. So here that is trigeminal 1, this is trigeminal 2, this is trigeminal 3. So other areas are supplied by the spinal segments. Okay. So we'll see the sensory innervation detailing. Okay. So now actually 5 branches of the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal supplies the ophthalmic zone. Okay. So this is the ophthalmic zone. Okay. So the ophthalmic zone is supplied by the supratrachear now, that will be medial to the supraorbital now. In the next picture you can see. So this is the supraorbital now, which emerges from the supraorbital foramen, and here medial to that you can see the supratrachear now. Then you can see the infratrachear now just below the supratrachear now, and you can see the external nasal now is supplying the external aspect of the nose, and the next one will be the lacrimal now. So all these 5 are branches of ophthalmic division of trigeminal nerve. Okay, so clear. So you have to know the names individually, and you have to memorize this picture also. Okay, so I think you are clear here. Then next come to the next zone, there is a maxillary zone, that is the area of the lateral angle of the eye and lateral part of the orbit and a part of forehead, lateral part of forehead and lateral part of nose and medial part of cheek and entire upper lip and lateral part of the upper part of angle of mouth. So this is supplied by 3 branches from maxillary division of trigeminal. One is the infraorbital now, you know it emerges from infraorbital foramen. The next one will be the zygomaticofacial now, which emerges from zygomaticofacial foramen. One more is the zygomaticotemporal now, which emerges from zygomaticotemporal foramen here. All 3 are branches of maxillary division. Then the third area here is the mandibular zone. Okay, this is the mandibular zone. Okay, so the mandibular zone is supplied by 3 nerves. Mental nerve, which emerges from mental foramen. Buccal nerve. So you have buccal branch of facial nerve also, buccal branch of mandibular division of trigeminal. You should not confuse. So the buccal branch of mandibular division of trigeminal nerve is purely sensory, but buccal branch of facial nerve is purely motor. Okay, and one more nerve, there is the auriculotemporal nerve. Okay, which supplies both the auricle and the temporal region. Okay, so will you please mute your mic? Okay. So do you have any doubt in this? Okay, this is very important. So other than this, actually the area near the angle of the mandible is supplied by the greater auricular nerve, so which is a branch from the cervical plexus. Okay. So the sensory innervation of the face is entirely from the trigeminal nerve, and the motor innervation is mainly from the facial nerve. So motor innervation means it supplies the muscles of facial expression. So except which muscle? Will you answer? Except which muscle? All other muscles of face are supplied by facial nerve except which? Will you answer for this question? Very good. That is levator palpebrae superioris, which is a muscle of the orbit. Good. So now I think you are clear about the innervations. Next we will go on to the blood supply of the face. The blood supply of the face is mainly supplied by the facial artery, and one more artery also, transverse facial artery. But the facial artery serves more important thing here. Okay, so the facial artery is a branch of the external carotid artery. You know the common carotid artery, left common carotid artery is a branch from the arch of aorta, right from the brachiocephalic tract. So this common carotid artery actually divides into external and internal. The external carotid artery supplies the external aspect of the head and neck. Internal carotid artery through carotid canal in the base of the skull, it enters the interior of the skull, and it supplies mainly the brain and even the meninges around the brain. Okay, so now if you see the facial artery, okay, it arises from the external carotid artery in the carotid triangle here, okay, and it reaches the base of the angle of the mandible, okay, in the submandibular region. Then it enters the face by winding round the antero-inferior angle of the masseter. Okay, so here the masseter muscle will be there. That muscle is a muscle of mastication. So it winds round the antero-inferior angle of the masseter muscle. Then it run upwards and forwards. Okay, so the course here is tortuous. Okay, on reaching the lateral angle of the on reaching the medial angle of the eye, okay, it ends by anastomosing with the dorsal nasal branch of the ophthalmic artery. Actually, this ophthalmic artery is a branch of the internal carotid artery, so there will be communication between the external and internal carotid artery through this anastomosis. Okay, so other than this, what are the branches it gives? Okay, so it gives three branches in the face. One is the inferior labial artery. You can see this is the inferior labial artery. Okay, other one is the superior labial artery. The next one will be the lateral nasal artery. You can see in the next picture. So this is inferior labial, superior labial and lateral nasal artery. So this lateral nasal artery supplies the nose, okay, bridge and the aid of the nose. So actually near the angle of the mouth, it lies 1.25 centimeter away from the angle of the mouth. Okay, the course is tortuous. So why it is tortuous means that's why it allows the movement of the lips and the nose. Okay. Any doubt in the facial artery? How it ends? By anastomosing with the dorsal nasal branch of the ophthalmic artery. Okay. So facial artery is an important 5-mark question. Okay. So the next artery, small artery which contributes to the blood supply of the face is the transverse facial artery, which is a branch from the superficial temporal artery. The superficial temporal artery in turn is a branch of the external carotid artery. Okay. So with this I will continue with the venous drainage of the face. Very, very important. Okay. So I think you are familiar with this slide because in the scalp itself you know. So I will explain once again. So first understand what I am saying. Okay. So you have a supratracheal vein accompanying the supratracheal artery in the scalp and supraorbital artery accompanied by the supraorbital vein. So you have two veins here, supratracheal vein, supraorbital vein. So both meets at the medial angle of the eye, joins to form the angular artery. Since it meets at the angle of the eye, this artery is called angular artery. Angular vein. Angular vein. So this angular vein, it runs downwards. Okay. So when it reaches the face, then it is called as facial vein. Okay. After running downwards and reaching the face, it becomes the facial vein. So this facial vein, it joins with the anterior division of the retromandibular vein here. Okay. So now this both the union between the anterior division of retromandibular vein and the facial vein, it forms the common facial vein. So this common facial vein, it ends in the internal jugular vein. Okay. So I think you are clear. Once again I will explain. So the supratracheal vein, supraorbital vein joins at the angle of the eye to form the angular vein. Angular vein run downwards and reaching the face. The name is changed here. It is facial vein. So the facial vein on near the mandible joins with the anterior division of the retromandibular vein. Now both the veins joins to form the common facial vein, which ends in the internal jugular vein. Okay. Now how this retromandibular vein is formed? Okay. Now see this again picture here. So this actually this is a superficial temporal vein. The superficial temporal vein joins with the maxillary vein here. So this both the veins joins to form the retromandibular vein. So this retromandibular vein here you can see the insert here. The retromandibular vein divides into anterior division, posterior division. Anterior division joins with facial vein to form common facial vein, which drains into IJV. The posterior division of retromandibular vein joins with the posterior auricular vein to form the external jugular vein. Okay, so this external jugular vein ends in the subclavian vein. Okay, so now I think you are clear about the venous drainage. So other than this facial vein, it communicates with the, actually deeply it communicates with the deep facial vein, and it communicates with the pterygoid venous plexus, and this pterygoid venous plexus, it communicates with cavernous sinus, and through the angular vein it communicates with the superior ophthalmic vein, and through supraorbital vein it communicates with even the cavernous sinus. So that's why any infection in the face will be, if it is not treated properly, it will be communicated to the cavernous sinus, and this leads on to cavernous sinus thrombosis. Okay. So next we will see about the lymphatic drainage of the scalp and the face. It is again divided into three zones: upper territory, and this is middle territory, and the lower territory. Okay. So the upper territory is the major part of the forehead and lateral half of eyelid, including the conjunctiva and parotid area here and adjoining part of cheek. So here the lymphatics will drain into the preauricular lymph nodes here. Okay. And if you see the middle territory area, this is the middle territory area. So it comprises the central part of the forehead and medial half of the eyelid, external nose, upper lip, lateral part of the lower lip here, and medial part of cheek and greater part of the lower jaw. So the lymphatics from this area drain into submandibular lymph node. Okay. Next, if you see the lower territory, it mainly comprises the lower part of the central part of lower lip and the chin, so which drains into submental lymph node. So it is divided into three lymphatic drainage: upper territory, middle, lower. Upper territory drains into preauricular lymph node, middle territory into submandibular lymph node, and lower territory into the submental lymph node. This is also an important 5-mark question. Practice the diagram. Okay, that is very important. Okay. So now come to the applied anatomy related to the face. That is the dangerous area of the face, which is very important. So as I already said, the facial vein and its communication, they are divided of valves in the lumens. So it has communication with deep facial vein, and through it communicates with cavernous sinus. Since you have the muscles of facial expression, so usually the superficial fascia has muscles, even the blood vessels are present in the superficial. If the muscle moves, the vein also will move. Okay, so it will easily spread the septic emboli from infected area, mainly from the lower part of the nose and the upper lip and adjoining part of cheek. This part of the face is called dangerous area of the face. So from here, actually septic emboli will, from facial vein it goes to deep facial vein, then it goes to pterygoid venous plexus, then it goes to emissary vein, then it goes to cavernous sinus. So this will lead to meningitis and cavernous sinus thrombosis. That's why you should not touch the pimples. Okay, so keep on plugging the pimples in this area will lead on to infection and lead on to meningitis and cavernous sinus thrombosis. Okay. So mute your mic, please. Okay. So next we'll go on to the Bell's palsy. So you know it is a lower motor neuron type of paralysis of facial muscles that is mainly due to compression of the facial nerve in the facial canal near stylomastoid foramen. So here the etiology is not known, but probably they are telling it is due to viral infection. Okay. So in the, you can see in this picture, so the Bell's palsy on the right side, so only the left side muscles are active here. So here totally actually it is smooth. You can see the loss of wrinkles on the forehead on the right side and unable to close the eye on the right side, and you can see the epiphora and loss of nasolabial fold also, and you can see the drooling of saliva from the angle of the mouth, and there will be accumulation of food into the vestibule of the mouth also because of the paralysis of buccinator muscle. So this loss of wrinkles is mainly produced by the paralysis of frontal body of occipitofrontalis. Inability to close is mainly by orbicularis oculi, and even from the This loss of nasolabial fold is mainly due to the muscles attached to angle of mouth. Okay, and drooling of saliva, all those is due to pallus of orbicularis oris and muscles attached to angle of mouth. Okay, so in actually the facial nerve damage and facial muscle paralysis will be divided into lower motor neuron type and upper motor neuron type. In upper motor neuron type, because of involvement of pyramidal tract, the upper part of the face will be spared because you have bilateral representation there. That's why it is spared here. Okay. So Bell's palsy is an important 5-mark question. It is a clinical anatomy case also for you. It's very important. Okay. So that's all about the applied anatomy and the muscles of face and nerve supply. So you have with this I finished the class. Okay.